So let's talk about how to learn new things. And the first thing I'm going to say about how to learn new things is this, that most people, when it comes to learning new things, they make a couple of mistakes that make it really, really hard to learn new things. And one of the things that I've discovered as a person who some people have described as a Renaissance man, I don't know what that means, but I heard somebody use it in a sentence one time. That's exactly how they used it. Anyway, but I learn a lot of things about a lot of different things. I know how to play the guitar, and I can play the piano, and I can draw, and I can paint, and all this other stuff. Not because I'm so great, but just because I find everything fascinating. And recently I took on learning Hebrew, and my goal is to really master Hebrew conversationally and to be able to write it within 90 days. That's my goal. I've only been doing it for less than 30 days now, but we're heading on the right track. Anyway, most people start out learning the wrong way. They start out thinking that something is hard. And they don't understand what even the objective of learning is. Most people make the mistake, because of our educational system in America, most people make the mistake of thinking that the purpose of learning is knowing. So in other words, I know this, I can check it off. I know this, I can check it off. I know this, I can pass a test. The purpose of learning is not knowing. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say, just bear with me, don't hang up on me, that learning is, or not learning, but that I'm going to go so far as to say that knowing is the biggest enemy of learning that there is. What do I mean by that? Knowing is the biggest enemy of learning. Here's what I mean. The scripture says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Isn't that what it says? Well, here's what's interesting about that. Why would God's people not know? Well, it tells us in the same passage. It wasn't that they couldn't know that they didn't know. It was because they wouldn't know. It says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. The two biggest reasons people reject knowledge is, one, because they think they already know. Two, because they think they can't learn. Those are the two biggest hindrances to learning. Well, thinking that you already know, I promise you, the more you learn about anything, the more you will realize you don't know. If you don't believe that's true, just have some teenagers. That will prove it to you right there. They know everything because they don't know how much there is to know. But the older we get and the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. And so understand, if you approach learning from the standpoint that the objective is not getting to the place where you can check it off and say, I know that. But the purpose of learning is mastery. Here's why people struggle when they're learning new things. And it doesn't matter what those new things are. Those new things could be playing a musical instrument, learning a language, learning how to trade stocks. It doesn't matter. When people begin to learn a new thing, one of the reasons they struggle is because they have this check-off mentality. But if you think about it, when you really know how to do something, you can do it effortlessly. It requires no effort. You're in flow. Well, the things that you have mastered in your life, you can do them without thinking about them. You can tie your shoes without thinking about it. Well, when you really master something, you won't have to think about that. And here's why that's important. Let's say I have an understanding of a concept. Well, we can call this concept playing the guitar. I have an understanding of the concept of playing the guitar, and let's say I've got it down 35%, but I can do it, right? And then I take something else, and I take playing a lead, and I add that on top of that, and that's 35%. So now I've got these two things that are unclear. And then I take another thing that's unclear and stack it on top of that, and another thing that's then I feel overwhelmed. I promise you, anytime you feel overwhelmed in your life, the reason you feel overwhelmed is because you have been stacking lack of clarity on top of lack of clarity on top of lack of clarity on top of lack of clarity, instead of stacking mastery on top of mastery on top of mastery on top of mastery. The thing that makes learning easy is what I call mastery stacking. You master one component and you master it till you can do it in your sleep. Like you can dream about it. Like, it's so funny. I know this is weird, but I have dreams about me saying Hebrew words. I wake up and I'm dreaming about Hebrew words. Why? Because I'm mastering it. I'm not just trying to get to the point where I say, okay, I can write that letter. Okay, I can write that letter. I can recognize it, but I really want to own it. And I promise you, if you will take your time and stop being in a big hurry to know it, but instead take your time in mastering it, you will find that when you stack mastery on top of mastery on top of mastery, it all becomes effortless. So the purpose of learning is not knowing. The purpose of learning is mastery. If you'll just remember that one thing and just do something until you feel like you can do it forwards, backwards, and inside out, I promise you, when you stack those things on top of each other, that area of your life becomes infinitely easier.